What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Geeks and Goblins once again, joined by Utopian Revolt. How's everybody doing? Utopian Revolt, what are your words of the day for the people? What do you have to say to
Words of the day. Let's see. We got a nice show incoming. This is gonna probably be our best episode yet. I'm gonna put those vibes out there right now.
Ooh, that's bold.
Um,
That's bold.
um, I don't know, man. We got a lot to talk about, and I think a lot of this is gonna be very exciting for the Goblin Gang for sure.
Let's see who we got in here so far. Emergency exit. We see how you doing. Stop following and unfollowing. It's ruining my analytics. I'm not joking anymore. Azu, hello as always, and DJP Square. How are y'all doing? Hey. Oh, would you look at that? I have cited the emergency exit he has followed in on yet again.
Oh, see, you do it to yourself at
I
this point.
suppose, man. I suppose it's. I mean, like, I just wish he would take me seriously. I'm starting to feel like I'm actually being ignored, which is, like, I guess the problem.
Oh, oh,
Oof.
damn.
Don't let me. We're gonna have to hire mods one day, and then those ban hammers, they're just gonna keep coming, man. Coming. Oh man, it's been an interesting week
hmm
in gaming.
hmm
There's so much, and not even just gaming. I'm looking at our notes. A couple of things, so we'll get to it when we get to it. But let's go ahead and kick her off, right? Let's get
All
straight into
right,
it.
man.
Why don't you lead us in?
So, earlier this week, seemingly out of nowhere, something gigantic happened in the gaming industry. A new Witcher game was announced.
Yeah,
I did not expect it to happen this early, but it freaking happened, and here we are. Here we are.
sir. Like I thought they were done personally. Am
Yeah.
I like a gigantic? Oh, I gotta be honest. But I've been keeping track, and I thought for all intents and purposes that they would be franchise.
Right. I don't know. I think with how popular the show has kind of like turned into, like it's essentially one of Netflix's biggest exclusives at this point. And with the success of that show, I think it's only natural that they're going to be doing more in this universe. And yeah, I mean, I think you're right though. I don't think I expected it to happen, at least not this soon, like I said.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you, because you're way more familiar. Where do you think they are going story wise with this?
I don't know. I don't know.
Ooh,
That's the beauty of this announcement, right? Because
okay.
we know absolutely nothing. We know that it's going to be a new school, apparently, according to like the poster that they posted, saying a new saga begins. That also implies that it's probably going to be a new cast. But we still don't know of like what time period is going to be. Whether it's going to be a prequel to the main trilogy or whether it's going to be in the far future or side by side. I don't know. I've thought about it for a good week now, and I don't have a guess, and that just makes me more excited about this.
I will say, I've heard that the school, I'm sorry, links that everyone.
Mm,
I think I'm not sure if that's like a confirmed thing, but I'll tell you what's like exciting about this. So my interest, and I'm gonna bring another franchise. My interest in The Witcher is similar to like kind of my interest. I've dabbled a little bit, but I've never been like super interested until we get some new announcements. So I'm getting Mass Effect 4 announcement vibes from.
ooh,
All we got is
yeah.
this. Well, we got a trailer with Mass Effect 4, like, but we only got a little bit, and we don't know exactly where this is going.
You know what's funny about that Mass Effect 4 parallel?
Hmm.
Um, both games have been announced to be Unreal Engine 5 games. So both
Yes,
developers are ditching their own proprietary engines for an engine that's a lot more commonly used in the gaming industry.
I'm super worried about that. Um,
Yeah.
worried about it in a good, you know.
Okay.
Um, so correct me if I'm wrong. Cyber and on the
Yes, yes, it did.
so no shade towards the engine because again, know me, I think it's a beauty. I love it. I think Unreal Engine 5 is also founding. So
Oh yeah.
to have them move over is super exciting for me. Love to see what they build on. I think a good question is, does that mean that we are going to see all future games move over from the Red Engine to 5?
So I know that during the announcement for the Witcher, the new Witcher game, they also confirmed that they're still working on the Cyberpunk expansion, and that's still going to be using the Red Engine. But I believe they did say that every future game is going to be on Real Engine from here on out, and I think it's very exciting. And I also think this is a direct response to the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk. Um, Mainly because Unreal Engine is a lot more scalable. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
Epic Games uses it for mobile games. They use it for desktop games, console games, next gen, last gen, whatever it is. I mean, Unreal Engine can handle it.
and if you haven't, you're really missing one of those things. Blow me away, completely
Oh
blow.
yeah. It's crazy because I think we haven't really seen the full effects of Unreal Engine 5 yet. I think within the next year or two, we're going to start seeing a lot more next gen exclusive games using Unreal Engine 5. And I think that's when we're going to see like the true arrival of next gen, which is a little funny to say that after this already being second year of next gen, you know?
Absolutely. And give me just a second. I'm checking out my audio levels briefly. I'm seeing that I'm having some the chat is letting me know that I'm having some audio issues. So this should be better, I think. I apologize everybody for the inconvenience. I'm actually not too sure why it's doing that all of a sudden, but I think we're good to go now. To riff off of what you said, do you think it's a superior engine, just like in terms of game engines that we've gotten that are out there right now? Unreal Engine tends to, for me anyway, excel over everybody else's. Like it's always perfect.
I agree with that. I think that in terms of usability, it is
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be one of the easier to use ecosystems for any developer and any publisher. Um, I would say Unity is probably right up there in terms of usability. But the thing about Unity is that you have to do a lot of the programming yourself,
Yeah,
whereas Unreal Engines has a lot of plugins that you can just go ahead and use with your game. So for that reason, I think it is a superior engine, and I'm curious to see how they're going to incorporate some of these extra features into the new Witcher game.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, as far as a cast goes, again, like this would be somewhere that you're more familiar with. I know I'm obviously familiar with the main ones, especially because of the Netflix show. So I'm familiar with Geralt or Geralt. I know I'm butchering the name. Yennefer, Ciri, which by the way, super upset we didn't get Ciri in Cyberpunk, considering the little nod that you get in Witcher 3. What are you
Mm.
looking for in here?
So there's really like okay, so I'm in love with the main cast of the original trilogy and the shows, of course, and the books. I've read a couple of the books and they're fantastic. That being said, like if we are getting a brand new saga, there's only really two characters I want to see return,
Okay.
and that would be Dandelion and that'd be Siri. Just them two. I don't think you really need to introduce the other ones. I think it all depends on what type of game it is and what the setting is. I've heard some rumors. Well, the rumors is putting it a little too friendly. It's more like speculation that this game is going to be a create your own character type of game. And
Interesting.
I think if it is that, we do need to have at least some familiar characters to bring in the hardcore fans of The Witcher and kind
Yeah.
of reintroduce them to the world into like a new area or something like that, you know?
Now, do you think that messes with the formula a little bit? I know some people are very particular about, especially linear story. Well, not super linear, obviously, but linear story-based RPGs, where you're initially playing as a character and you're introduced to a bunch of other characters. I know, for example, Watch Dogs Legion. People were not very fond of, not necessarily having a single character to stick to and with story elements. So I guess it kind of works out with The Witcher a little bit because they're basing it off of this. They're basing it off the books, the world anyway,
Mm.
not necessarily each game, but they're basing it off the world, so you can mess around in that world a little bit.
Yeah. I think the biggest counter argument to that would be Cyberpunk. I think Cyberpunk did a really good, I guess, mesh of creating your own character, but still being able to tell a
Mm.
fantastically written story. At least in my opinion. I know some people may have a different opinion, but I don't know. I think that you can still have a very focused narrative with a create your own character type of template. I mean, we're kind of seeing that with our very own Wizarding World tabletop RPG that we're doing every Wednesday.
Yeah.
You still have a story in mind for us, but we still have that flexibility to do what we want with the character. So I don't think it's going to really hinder the narrative at all.
Okay, okay. Now I do have a question that for you specifically that touches on something that's not in our notes. How do you think, or what do you think that they should have learned from Cyberpunk going into The Witcher?
So this first one, I think, has been completely disregarded. I think that announcing it too early is a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cyberpunk was announced 7 or 8 years prior to even launching. So, considering the type of announcement we got for this new Witcher game, I think that's already out the window. I don't think we see this game until like 2025 at the earliest, probably 2026, 2027 at the end of the generation. So I don't think they listened to that part. But the next part would probably be like not over promising for older consoles.
Okay.
So if this game is going to come out like late generation, I hope that they have enough foresight to be able to just either not do a current gen one, or with Unreal Engine 5, it's going to be much more scalable. So just making sure that you can deliver on your promises for performance.
Okay. Okay. Now, trilogy or standalone? What would you prefer? I don't know. I'm kind of like I'm digging standalone games right now. That goes a little bit more into our topic a little later on, but like give me some one-offs, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a standalone game, especially nowadays where everything has a series, it would be a breath of fresh air. Uh, but ultimately, I think it all depends on the story that they want to tell.
Yeah.
If the writers all come together and they're like, "Hey, listen, we're gonna need at least two more games to tell the story we want to tell," then I'm all for a trilogy. I just want it to have a good story because that's what I love about CD Projekt Red games.
Yeah, and of course, I think I don't want to say that's like a loaded question, but it all definitely depends on the performance of what they release first. So
Right.
I don't see that going sideways for them. The Witcher is such a beloved franchise.
I don't think many people saw it going sideways for Cyberpunk because
That's
CD
valid.
Projekt Red was such a beloved,
That is valid.
publisher. It's hard to tell nowadays, but considering that it is moving to a much more user-friendly engine, at least in my experience, I have never used Red Engine or I've never known anyone who uses it. I just do know that Unreal Engine 5 is such a good starting point for a lot of developers, whether they're experienced or brand new to the industry. So that's just going to make the creation of the game much easier.
Hmm.
I don't think they're going to fuck this one up, and I'm looking forward to see what they're going to do with it.
And I think this is good. I think this is good because they're going back to something that they know, something that a lot of people think was that attributed to Cyberpunk's shortcomings was they were stepping into new ground. There were first-person
Right.
shooter elements there. They were talking about multiplayer. We were going all the way from a more medieval setting to straight futuristic setting that required so many more moving parts. For those developers that have been in that lane for so long, not to say that they aren't capable, but it was definitely a challenge. So to
Mhm.
see them go through that and then come back to give us more of a franchise and a world and a style of game that they're familiar with, I think that's exciting for me.
Mhm. I agree, and I think also just it was going to your point. I think Cyberpunk was way too ambitious. I know that they received a bunch of grants from the Polish government to do research on certain like mechanics for video games, like asynchronous multiplayer and that type of stuff. So I feel. I feel like this Witcher game is still going to be very ambitious, and they're probably going to take a lot of what they wanted to do with Cyberpunk, but ultimately ended up scrapping?
Hmm.
Question mark. Maybe expansion, maybe multiplayer still comes. Um, I just think we're gonna get a lot more of a refined take, a refined game with The Witcher, essentially because it is essentially CD Projekt Red's brainchild. I know that the author is the one who created the story, but CD Projekt Red put this franchise on the map, and there's no question about it.
Okay, okay. So you've done a great job on touching on the things that you hope for and dream for in this particular game. Is there anything else you want to tack on to that? Because I have a wrench that I'm going to throw in the hopes and dreams. It's completely left field, but I have a wrench. So you go first.
So my so if we're just talking about dreams, something that I don't think is gonna happen, but I hope it does. If this is a create your own character type of game, I would love some co-op, man. I am a huge believer in co-op and playing narrative driven games with a friend. I know a lot of people have wanted that for Skyrim in the past, for Fallout, for even for The Witcher, like people have wanted to be able to play these amazing games with their friends. So that's my dream. But like you said, I've touched on a lot of my hopes and dreams already. I'm interested in hearing your wrench. What is this?
Okay, complete left field. It's gonna piss everybody off. All right. So, if so, actually, before I throw my wrench, I will say this: if they do go the create your character route, personally, because I wanted to love them, uh, I hope they do not go like choose a life path route. If
Mm,
they do, I hope they really, really flesh that idea out and
mhm.
really make it into something special. The biggest disappointment for me with Cyberpunk was the letdown that was the life paths. It was, for the
Yeah.
most part, they were all the same length and they ended and put you in the same places. So that was a big disappointment for me. So I'm hoping for the fans of the franchise, as well as to somebody who could potentially become a big, a fan of the franchise himself, that they don't take that life path route. And if they do, it's more fleshed out. It's something that's more enjoyable. As far as my wrench goes, the same thing I wanted for Elder Scrolls 6, toss it in the future. I thought Starfield was going to be Khajiits in space selling wares and collecting credits, but I'm not getting that, I don't think. So give me The Witcher with cyberpunk vibes.
I don't think that's gonna happen at all. But I'm
Absolutely
just
not.
picturing a Witcher sword that's kind of like a lightsaber,
Yes.
and I'm already sold, man. Like I wouldn't be upset if that happened. I'd actually be like excited about
I'm
it.
look, Geeks and Goblins game development studio. That's all I'm saying.
Oh,
Like we can
okay.
make it happen. You have the brains. I can do all the marketing. All right.
Yeah,
We can do this. Like we can just
I think
scoop up
we're
the
onto
IP.
something, man.
We could do this, bro.
You
We
know
could do
what,
this.
man? Like, and then we're gonna just be purchased by Microsoft, and then
Hopefully.
Game Pass day one.
I'm trying to be like I want to be a corporate shell. Buy me. Buy me. I'm going for no less than 30 mil, and that is on the table.
All right.
Oh man. Let's move on into the review season section. A new section for us. Uh, I know we discussed. Do we want to do this like once a month, maybe like end of the month? All
Yeah,
aggregate all the games that come out.
I think that'd be a good idea. And I think it would have been a little difficult to do it this month because there's so much coming
There's
out, and
so
then in
much.
bro, and then in this week alone, we've had like all these bangers that we're about to talk about. Like it's kind of crazy, but I think going forward, we are going to start seeing a slow season with video game releases. So I
Yeah.
would love to do this every like the end of the month or the beginning of the next month or something like that.
Oh yeah, touch on them. Let's go ahead and start. Let's talk about Tunic. It released on March 16th of this year. It was created by Andrew Scholdice. 85 out of 100 on Open Critic, 94% critics, pardon, recommend. What are this was on my radar. I remember seeing a little bit of it. I wasn't necessarily sure if I wanted to play it. For me, it was a little too cutesy, but like the more and more I started to see of it around release time, the more and more I was actually a little intrigued.
Yeah, I think it was first announced in 2019 in an Xbox showcase, and I believe so. I might be wrong
Yeah, I
about
think
that.
you're actually right.
Uh, oh, okay. Well, look at that.
I got,
But as far as I'm aware, and all the gameplay I've seen, it just looks like a very cutesy Zelda type of game, but it's still, from what I've heard, very challenging and very gripping just from
yeah,
the beginning to the end. and it is something that has really kind of like interested me. I don't know if I'm going to be playing it anytime soon because I have so much to play. Um, but it is something I'm definitely interested in playing, especially being a fan of like the old school Zelda games and
Hmm.
games like Ocean Horn, that type of stuff. It's definitely on my radar.
And just to put it out there, the main character is just adorable. Like I love foxes, man. I really love
Oh yeah.
foxes. Cute foxes are it. Ryan McCaffrey of IGN says Tunic is unapologetically challenging. Oh, pardon. That seems to be a little bit of typo on IGN's part. Tunic is an unapologetically challenging action adventure game that is charming, multi-layered, and immensely rewarding to solve. IGN gives it a 9 out of 10. I don't know about those guys at IGN. I've seen them play some games, and
It's true.
they have some
It's
questionable talent in game. But if you want yourself a good action adventure game, regardless of IGN score, the word is out that Tunic seems to be a good buy. I've been
yeah.
watching it. Is it on Game Pass?
I don't know. Let me actually check real quick.
Because if
I
it's on
don't
Game
believe it
Pass,
is.
no one has an excuse not to play it.
Right.
No one has an excuse
Let's
not to
see.
play it.
So no, it's not on game.
Ah, my spirit. I'm probably gonna get it anyway.
Oh, never mind. Actually, this is March 16th, 2022. This was the day it came out. Tunic launches today for Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, and with Xbox Game Pass.
There we go. There we go. I will give you guys live opinions on Tunic next week, just so you can know how I feel about it. And I expect you to play it as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Moving
I think
on.
no excuses for the radar at this point, right? That's going straight on my PC after the stream.
There you go. There you go. Moving on, Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Fill us in, Utopian Revolt. How does the world feel about Tiny Tina's Wonderland?
So I think this is one of the most hyped games of the early 2022 so far. It released just a couple days ago. Actually, it released just yesterday, March 25th,
Yep.
on PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PS4, and PS5. It's created by 2K Games, published by Gearbox, as always. Um, it's essentially kind of like Borderlands meets Dungeons and Dragons, which I think is really cool. Apparently, it's pretty decent. It has an 80 out of 100 on OpenCritic right now. 87% of critics recommend. So it seems like there's enough there that people like it. And I know that I've had a couple coworkers mentioning that they've been playing it or they've been trying to play it. So it just seems that there's a lot of hype around it, and it's interesting to see if it has the legs that a Borderlands game has.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but we'll have to wait and see about that.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, it is a AAA release, right? Borderlands at this point in its life is a AAA release, so I know that it piqued my interest just based off the fact that it's supposed to be Tiny Tina leading a D&D session, correct? Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
of course, if you're familiar with our Harry Potter tabletop, and if you know me personally, that's that's my bag, man. Like, give me
Yeah.
D&D. So the caveat for me was, it's also not Dungeon Lands. I was about to say Dungeon Lands. It's also Borderlands, which is not exactly one of my favorite franchises, but
Right.
given that it's kind of that blend, I'm willing to give it a shot. From what I've seen of it, it does look very interesting. I love the aesthetic. I've always loved the
Mhm.
shell shaded nature of Borderlands, so getting that together with Dungeons and Dragons, trying to tell that kind of story, that's super interesting to me. Regardless, any game could do that, and it would definitely pique my interest a little bit.
And I think one of the biggest aspects, whether you're a fan of Borderlands or not, it is undoubtedly one of the biggest co-op games out there in the market.
Oh, easily.
And what's really cool about this game is actually one of the fewer games that support full crossplay, including like
Yeah,
PS5. We talked about this last show actually. So I think that by itself is gonna make this a big release. You know.
I agree. I agree. Chris Tapsell from Eurogamer says, despite an endearing commitment to its relentlessly positive tone, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands almost feels designed by a dice roll. No score, but generally neutral review. That's an interesting statement right there. It feels almost designed by a dice roll. I feel like that statement is like, I don't want to say it's supposed to be inherently a negative statement, but as a DM, that sounds amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I was gonna actually say the same thing. It's at least in this little quote, it sounds kind of like a negative thing without reading the full review. But I mean, if you were interested in this game because of its D&D kind of like esque nature, I mean, that's really exciting on its own.
Exactly, man. Like I don't know, the idea of like I don't obviously they weren't sitting in the office and they're saying, "All right, roll d20 to see if the gun will be blue or black." But like either way, like that for me makes it sound interesting. We're
Mhm.
back March 25th with the buttless wonder Kirby and the Forbidden Lands. The Forgotten Land, I apologize. Created by Nintendo, obviously. 85 out of 100 on OpenCritic. 93% critics recommend. Kirby, everyone's favorite champ in Super Smash Brothers, my least favorite because I can't seem to beat him. You picking it up?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like if I pick this up, it's gonna be a wait for sale type of situation. Which
Mm,
with Nintendo games, it could be like upwards of a century before that happens. Um, but everything I'm hearing about this game it's been great so far. People are comparing it to like Breath of the Wild.
yeah.
People are saying it's more of a quality game than Pokemon Arceus was, which I love the hell out of Arceus. Um, but all the gameplay I've seen, man, it looks like a breezy adventure, and it is something I'd be interested in playing. But like I said, it's probably a wait for sale for me.
That's such an interesting thought to hear somebody say like Kirby it's playing like Breath of the Wild. That is a like a
Yeah.
very interesting concept. I got to say this as well. I you have to appreciate regardless of if you like it or not. You have to appreciate the impact that Breath of the Wild has had on video game releases. I mean,
Oh yeah.
from Kirby, which to a degree makes sense, it's in-house studio, right? It's Nintendo, or pardon, publisher. But when you look at like Hogwarts Legacy, for example, one of their inspirations was Breath of the Wild. Like
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild has had such an amazing influence since its release, and I think that's
Mm.
been for the better, especially for a lot of single player games.
Dude, for sure. And going further than that, open world games in general. I think Elden Ring was partially inspired by Breath of the Wild as
Oh,
well, mainly due to the open nature of the open world,
yeah,
not having a bunch of markers that you have to check off and stuff like that. Just go out and explore.
yeah, the
Which
freedom.
I mean, exactly. And I think it's such a great thing that Breath of the Wild exists for sure.
Oh man, look, uh, it, we've gotten like so many in that vein. And it's kind of like almost everybody started kind of putting out their own, right? So I mean, you had Breath of the Wild, and then to a degree, Ghost of Tsushima. Like beautiful game, not exactly the full open world. Go what you need, do what you need to do. You can go straight to the boss experience, but you still feel that inspiration, right?
Mhm.
It's put its hands deep in gaming, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Mhm.
For me personally, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm gonna be picking up Kirby. I would not be surprised if right now, as we was saying in the chat, she's picking it up tomorrow or the day after, or I would not be
Yep,
surprised.
you're actually right about
Oh,
that.
yep. I know my wife, man. But I know my wife. I hope that
She just bought it.
those that get it enjoy it. Heather Wald of Games Radar Plus says Kirby's latest adventure is an absolute treat and one you won't want to miss. With more open platforming and an eye-grabbing 3D world, a generous helping of fantastic features, and Waddle D Town, and the introduction of Mouthful Mode, Kirby in the Forbidden Land offers up a memorable experience that will undoubtedly make you smile. 4.5 out of 5. That is a favorable review. I gotta give her
Yeah.
that. Waddle D Town. I'm trying to find out what that's about. See what like the nightlife is like, the bar scene. Waddle D Town. They sound like they get down in Waddle D Town.
Yeah, I think so.
Move us on,
Oh,
Utopian.
yeah.
What is next in the review roundup?
Okay, so this is a game that I know has been on a lot of people's radar for a couple years.
Ooh.
It's called Ghostwire Tokyo. It released yesterday as well on PC and PS5.
Okay.
It's funny. It's one of those Bethesda games that was announced to be exclusive to PlayStation alongside Deathloop, and everyone was questioning whether it was going to stay like that after Microsoft purchased Bethesda. As we see now, it's still going to be exclusive probably for like around a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
But it was created by Tango GameWorks. They have worked with Bethesda in the past for games like The Evil Within, The Evil Within 2. Um, so they tend to be very much like kind of horror shooter vibes. Whereas Wire Tokyo, instead of being a third-person shooter, as far as I am aware, it's a first-person open-world game, which is kind of crazy to me. It's a huge departure from what they're used to making.
Yeah.
And sometimes when a developer like that tries to change direction in such a breakneck speed, it can cause problems. And I think we have kind of seen it with this release. It has a 77 out of 100 on OpenCritic, which by no means is a bad score at
Oh
all,
yeah,
but it's
no,
definitely the
mid.
lowest of all the ones we've talked about. Only 66% of critics recommend the game, which is a fairly low number. It's still good. You know, there's a chance that you play and you like it. This is more of a 50% chance. You know, but it just seems like it's getting mixed reviews for performance, for design, and I don't know. I'm not really too excited about this game myself. It was on my radar for a little bit, but I think I'm just gonna wait for like a deep sale for this one.
Gotcha. I gotta say, out of all the ones that we've talked about tonight, as far as reviews go, this is the only one that I have kind of followed. A hefty follow, no, but you know, I've kept my eye on it from its announcement to its release, and it never really piqued my interest fully. Halfway through its, you know, kind of life, that's when it kind of started to garnish my interest a little bit. Particularly the combat system. I do love the style that they go with the combat system. Unfortunately, from everything that I've heard about the game, though, it does underwhelm. It's a cool concept. It's a very cool concept, and even just reading about it, it seems like a cool concept. And it seems like if they've gotten anything right in this game, they've definitely gotten the tone of the city down and what they're kind of trying to aim for there. So I'm unfortunately not excited for Ghostwire Tokyo either. I did have high hopes when I first saw it announced, but the more and more I watched its development and its life go on, the less and less excited I got about it. Primarily for me, I'm not a fan of scary games, and it looked like a scary game. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be a scary game, but that is kind of a little bit what they were going for. I know it's a lot of Japanese
Yeah.
spirits and Japanese demons, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think considering that they have made two horror-based shooters before this,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they were going for a horror vibe. The fact that it doesn't seem to be sticking that landing, especially after like we earlier this month we got Elden Ring, which
Mm-hmm.
is a vastly superior horror experience. It's a little unfortunate, but it doesn't matter because in a year it's going to be on Game Pass, and we're probably going to try it out
Oh,
anyways.
absolutely. Interestingly enough, I did not know it was well exclusive uh, until now. I had absolutely no idea. Also, just to also touch on like the kind of lack of the horror vibes. Every time I watch it, like some gameplay of it or a trailer or a playthrough, anytime I watch it, I just think it looks silly, and
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. Maybe it is the hand movements, like the hand movement combat. Like again, like I'm actually enticed by that, but at the same time, like I think it's the hand movement combat mixed with the villains. I don't get a serious
mm,
tone from this game at all, and I feel like it was initially billed to be more serious than what we got, and
yeah.
I think that actually might be the disconnect.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I feel like the hand-based combat has been done right by a lot of different games in the past, but for this specific one, I just I don't know. Like you said, I can't really put my finger on it. There seems to be something not clicking in terms of
Yeah,
just how they portrayed the world and just the threat that you're dealing with.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It's a miss for me. I don't know. Blake Hester, though, of Game Informer, says the things I like about Ghostwire, I really like. I'd go so far as to say that some elements, its world, enemy design, etc., are among my favorites in a game in years. That said, there are plenty of elements such as story and gameplay where Ghostwire is hardly up to snuff. 8 out of 10 from Game Informer. Now, I do like the guys over at Game Informer.
Yeah.
They know how to play video games. They know how to play
Yeah,
video
no,
games.
I agree, and I think just everything he was saying in that little excerpt of the larger review, it kind of touches on everything we've already talked about when it comes to this game. It just seems mediocre in my opinion. I know he was talking that like some of the elements that it does right is some of the best that he's seen in a couple years, but I mean, if the game is not fun to play, does that really matter?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to
Hmm.
talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
move on from segments, we're gonna move on to the weekly roundup. This week I don't think I need a break. I think I'm ready to go right in. How are you feeling?
Yeah. I'm feeling pretty good, man.
Yeah,
I'm
let's
ready.
keep it going. Let's keep it going. We got a lot to cover on the weekly roundup, courtesy of
Oh,
Utopian Revolt. Hats off to him. And to the followers, if you have that goblin spam, go and drop some goblin spam in Utopian Revolt. I feel like I haven't said that in a while. Go and drop some goblin spam for Utopian Revolt for filling out our little workspace here, because he has put in the work this week. We have a lot to cover on weekly roundup, and I am super excited to get into it. Would you like to lead us in, sir, on your wonderful project?
oh, this this first one hurts, especially after what you and I talked about last week. Uh, it does seem like our hopes for Quidditch World Cup 2022 has come to a halt, at least temporarily.
I
I
know.
hope. Uh, they have confirmed that Hogwarts Legacy multiplayer is not happening. It will not have any form of online co-op or like an arena mode. Oh man, the money was printing itself, and they chose to not want the money, which that's a bold move for a developer.
It couldn't be me. It couldn't happen at Goblin Games development studio. We want the bread. Give me the cheese.
Right.
Give me the cheddar. Like, it just made sense. They didn't even need to give us Hogwarts Legacy. They could have just given us Quidditch. They could have just gave us Quidditch, and everything would have been fine. I hope and I pray that just because we are not getting multiplayer does not mean that we are not going to get Quidditch in some way,
Right.
shape, or form. I can understand from a story standpoint, or just a gameplay standpoint, and setting in the world even. I can slightly understand the lack of multiplayer or co-op. I can
Yeah.
vibe with that. I'm not hurt, but I'm gonna need Quidditch. That is kind of a
Yep.
make or break thing for me.
I agree. And I can easily see this being one of those things very similar to Star Wars Battlefront 2 spinning off into Star Wars Squadrons. I could easily see them coming out with a Quidditch World Cup game next year or the year after with the same assets of this game
Mm-hmm.
and just make it multiplayer. I can see that happening.
I hope so.
But unfortunately, it's not happening this year.
Ugh.
But what we can talk about happening this year is PlayStation has acquired Haven Studios, who are they're headed by ex Assassin's Creed developer Jade Raymond.
Okay.
She's also worked for. You're not gonna like this one, but she's worked for Google Stadia in the past for their first party publishing unit before it was dismantled like weeks after it was announced. It feels like. Um, but it sounds like they're trying to make a new style of AAA game, and now they're owned by PlayStation, which I think is a really cool.
Okay, okay. So I got to admit, are how new is Haven Studios? I got to admit, even when the story broke, I tried to do a little bit of digging, and as far as Jade Raymond coming on board, I got that, but I'm not super familiar with the studio. Are they new to the
Yeah.
landscape?
Yeah. So I think what was happening is that Jade Raymond had created a whole new headquarters in Montreal
Okay.
for Google for their publishing unit. But when they were essentially axed, I think she took that same headquarters and she created a new studio. They have yet to create any games or publish any games, develop any games. Um, but I don't think we're going to be waiting too long because I have heard about them for like a good year and a half, 2 years. Wouldn't be surprised that they already have something in the works that's probably getting ready to be announced.
Okay. Okay, I can understand that. So that would explain why I haven't heard anything. Either way, that is a good development. Uh,
Yeah.
I I've always been a fan of these, the PlayStation and Xbox and Nintendo buying up developers. I'm so okay with it. It creates, I think it creates an area where it says, okay, you have a single lane that you can focus in. We will fund you. We will do what we need to do. You make the game that you want to make. And as long as that is the stipulation where I can come to work and I can make the game that I want to make, short of maybe having like a Crash Bandicoot Easter egg in there once in a blue moon or nothing super, super crazy, I'm on board. I do not mind these studios buying up, especially in the instance of, Blizzard Activision getting bought up. Those developers and everyone that works there needed a better work environment, and
Yeah.
hopefully that's what they get. No promises. I don't want to, I don't need this to be tagged in like 5 years when, if it gets run to the ground. But I hope it all leads to better things, is essentially what I'm trying to say.
It's funny because we talked about this back when Blizzard was purchased, and then shortly after that, it was Bungie being purchased by PlayStation. I remember me basically saying like I don't like the idea of these corporations owning everything. That being said, I have thought about it in a while, and I'm going to reserve some of this discussion for later on in a
Okay.
later Geeks and Goblins episode. But as long as it's done right, like you said, I think there's enough space in the gaming industry now where these publishers, like Sony, like Microsoft, like Nintendo, they can buy all these developers and create quality content and add more to the value of their platforms, like Game Pass or PlayStation Project Spartacus that we're going to be talking about shortly. Um, we have enough indie talent out there now that we don't have to worry about every single gaming studio being purchased. We can still account for a lot of autonomous development,
Absolutely.
which I think is important. As long as that remains an option, I don't see why this could be a bad thing. Um, except to your point about like the way that the employees are treated, and I don't trust Microsoft. I don't trust Microsoft.
That's fair.
Period.
That's fair.
PlayStation and Nintendo, I've heard different things about, so I'm a little bit more open with them. I just don't trust Microsoft the same way that I don't trust Google or Facebook with my data.
I can understand that. I can understand that. You are entitled to your opinion, and I will let you have it. I can completely understand it.
All right. Uh, so, in related news to PlayStation, do you want to talk about the next weekly roundup topic?
Absolutely. PlayStation 5 is getting VRR variable refresh rate. Dave, man, that's like a launch thing that we've been waiting on for quite some time. Like I'm
Yep.
honestly a little surprised it took them this long.
Yep. I think you're right. It does check that box of something that should have been available at launch. Now, all that we have left to really bitch about is 1440p support. We still don't have that. It's
Yeah.
either 1080p or 4K. It doesn't make sense. I feel like a PS5 it can be the superior console of the next gen consoles. Um, but there's just some things that Xbox is doing with the Series X that is just mind blowing. Like quick resume,
Mm-hmm.
1440p support out of the gate, variable refresh rate support out of the gate. I feel like Sony's slacking a little bit, and I hope we're not seeing kind of like a post PS2, pre PS3 cocky Sony where they're being very complacent. But the fact that they've added variable refresh rate now is a good thing. It's something that should be celebrated, despite it being a feature that probably should have been out at launch.
I don't know. I feel like maybe this is Sony trying to be ahead of the curve in some way. I could argue, I will put this argument out here, that a lot of gamers that are not primarily, let's say, PC gamers, a lot of gamers don't even think to go into the realm of 1440p. It's 1080 and 4K, especially in that market. You buy a full HD TV or you buy a UHD TV. You have 4K
Yeah.
access already, so I don't think this is the case, but it would not surprise me if Sony tries to like play the curb a little bit and says, why do we need to worry about 1440p?
I could see that. I could definitely see that, and I think considering Sony and their stance and their kind of grip on the gaming industry now in terms of console dominance, that does make sense. They're going to be catering towards the mass market, same way that
Yep.
their blockbuster games cater to a very large audience. Whereas Microsoft, since they're in the position that they need to be competing, they're doing all this, from day one, trying to garner the enthusiasm from hardcore gamers, which it makes sense. I agree with you.
Yeah, and they have their niche, they have their people. So I mean, like, I feel like if anybody understands their fan base well enough to know what they need to give them from, especially a hardware standpoint, I feel like it's probably Sony. I've personally never felt let down by hardware releases by Sony, except the PSP Go or the PSP Vita. Definitely those. They definitely have not got a stranglehold on the handhold market, but who can when Nintendo's around? But I don't feel like PlayStation tends to let their fans down from a hardware standpoint.
I just want to say, man, rest in peace, Vita. It was underappreciated, and this conversation just drives that home. Vita was a great console for the time,
Man,
and I think it was ruined by the fact that they had proprietary memory cards that were so
yeah,
freaking expensive. And I don't know, man. Rest in peace, Vita. I want to see like PlayStation come out with a Switch type of product. That'd be really cool. But I think you're right. They haven't really let down with their hardware. Maybe PlayStation 3, but that wasn't really because of the hardware. It was more so like the pricing. I think it was at $600 when it first came out.
it was a hefty price for the big boy.
Yeah, and then they announced like the boomerang controller. You remember that?
Oh, I wanted it. I wanted it. So actually, with that said, even though I wanted it, I will give you that point. There was one misstep, but so yeah, the boomerang controller. But I wanted it. It looked ergonomic.
Yeah,
I was excited.
that would have been really killer for like racing games.
Yeah,
But
just give me, and it
yeah, I
had the six
digress.
axis. So I mean, maybe they were
Yeah.
thinking ahead. Gran Turismo, like I said, they tried to think ahead of the curve. Who knows? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Changing gears a little bit, the Joker scene from the Batman release has been released online. The deleted scene featuring, and I'm going to butcher this, I say it now, because I have heard 4 different interpretations of the man's last name, featuring Barry Cognan's Joker from the Batman. What were your impressions? Because mine are going to be a little long. Like, not a segment's
Okay.
worth, but they're going to be a little long.
Well, this is where I'm going to be disappointing you and say that I haven't watched it yet, to
Oh,
be honest. I was not even aware that this was a thing until maybe a little bit earlier today where I
oh,
just saw it online. Um I
oh.
I I know that we saw a little tidbit of that Joker at the very end of the Batman. Sorry, spoilers. Spoiler alert. Didn't mean
It's
to
too late.
just say that, but if
They've
you
waited too long. I'm no longer doing
right.
spoiler alert.
But no, I haven't watched the deleted scene. I'm going to be doing that as soon as we're done with the stream. But I would like to hear your impressions, anyways.
So, um, as it is with these types of things, there are similarities that some would call out to Heath Ledger's Joker. And I think those are justified. I think those similarities are justified. But I think he does enough with the character and his interpretation that it is its own standout. Visually, just astounding, terrifying. It speaks to the character, especially if you're familiar with his more gruesome takes in the actual comic books themselves. It definitely speaks to the character. It's not off base at all. The Joker laugh, that's always going to be hit or miss. It was a hit for me, and just his delivery of this character as a whole blew me away. Of course, if you've seen the film, we do get a taste. We get an absolute taste. We get the whole bag here. We get the whole bag, and it
Oh,
leaves you wondering what are they going to do with this character going forward. Since I've seen the scene, I've had my own interpretation of like, oh man, this scene could happen, or oh man, this scene could happen. That's the type of performance that we get here. I do agree with its removal from the film. It
interesting. I was right about to ask you that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with its removal from the film. Its placement, when you watch it, you can kind of piece together where this would have happened in the film. I do not think it was necessary. I think everything that we get from this scene, we get in other parts. So it's definitely not 100% necessary. So I can see why they took it out. I can also understand that they took it out because they don't want to take away from anything else. The Joker is a massive character. He is a monumental character in comic books. Period. You bring him into this even for a second, which they did, and he was still the talk of the town for the amount of time that he's brought here. I can't imagine seeing this scene and then not getting him for the rest of the film. And I they left me wanting more. That's all I'm going to say. That's where I leave it. They definitely left me wanting more.
You saying all that kind of drives home how much better handled this movie was compared to any of the Snyderverse shit. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be controversial like that. I didn't like anything that Snyder touched myself.
Neither did
And
I.
after, letting it sit for a little bit, hearing what you're saying now, I still think that the Batman is the definitive Batman movie. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, 5 geeks, 5 goblins,
There we
whatever you
go.
want to call
And if you want our full opinions on that, go check out episode 1 and the VODs are over on YouTube. If you want our full opinions, if you happen to miss them. Sticking in the vein of DC Comics, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed again.
it. Yeah.
Again.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, the gameplay that they showed off where recently looked decent. The
Yeah.
graphics looked great. The voice acting, all phenomenal.
Yeah.
That being said, I struggle to find any sort of excitement for this game, knowing that it's a live service game and knowing how that's been handled with superhero games in the not so recent future not so recent past, and also recent past with like, Marvel's Avengers
Yeah.
and that type of stuff. The fact that it keeps getting delayed makes me worry that there is much bigger issues with development, and I'm starting to see just almost a mirror of Avengers, and
Yeah.
that just has me worried, man.
I I feel like there's maybe a change in the guard over at DC happening right now, because this is not, admittedly, this isn't even their highest profile delay of the year. Like, they've also delayed essentially their entire film slate. I think the only thing that we're getting this year, I know we're still getting Black Adam, and I know we're still getting I think Aquaman this year, but their flagship film, The Flash, moved to next year, and something in my opinion has to be happening over at WB, because like, they're delaying everything, and admittedly, from my end, because we've never had the opportunity to talk about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League here. On my end, it all looks mid. It all
Yeah,
looks absolutely mid for me. I think I'm excited. I'm excited for the Flash because of what it could potentially bring to the table and do for the DCEU. I'm boycotting Aquaman for my own reasons. And as far as Black Adam, sure. But from a gaming standpoint, man, something about the what is it, Arkham Knights, the
Gotham Knights.
Gotham Knights. Thank you, Gotham Knights. Something about it feels cheap to me, and I just haven't been able to get on that train. And something about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League just has not made me excited.
I agree with you with everything except Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights honestly looks kind of exciting to me,
Okay.
mainly because I feel like it's just going to be one of those 7 out of 10 fun co-op romps to play with a friend and then never really talk about ever again after that. Um, but I mean, needless to say, I don't really have high expectations for that either. And it's interesting to see where DC games have kind of ended up
Yeah.
after the Arkham trilogy, really, or not the trilogy, because Arkham Origins was also fantastic and underappreciated. Uh, but I personally feel like we're seeing kind of like the downfall of DC gaming, and we're starting to see the rise of Marvel gaming. And it's very interesting.
Hmm. Let me poke that bear really quick. The rise of Marvel gaming. Where do you see them
Okay,
rising from? Like,
so
I'm curious.
so I got 3 games on my list right off the bat. Right,
Okay.
we have Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man. We
Okay.
have Spider-Man Miles Morales, and we also have
Same game,
the
different skin.
Wolverine. Right, right. Which is fine because I think that's what Sony's starting to do more of. We've seen it with Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy. It's essentially the same thing, but it's just really cool to get more. And
Okay.
just the overall vibe of that game was great. But we're also getting the Wolverine by Insomniac. We're also
Yep.
getting, correct me if I'm wrong, the Midnight Suns.
Yes,
Uh,
we are getting Midnight Suns. Yes, from
I'm
the
I'm
developers of
stoked for
XCOM.
that. Yeah, dude, I personally think that's going to be freaking great as
Okay.
long as they don't hyper monetize it.
I'm not gonna lie.
Um,
Forgot about that. I'm excited again. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
I
I will
also,
bite that bullet. You reignited my excitement for Marvel games just by saying the Midnight
man,
Suns. I'm sold.
we also still kind of need to see you play Guardians of the Galaxy, which in my opinion is also a fantastic game. I
Yep.
really think that the only misstep, in my opinion, was Marvel's Avengers.
Yep.
And even then, the actual single player story part of Avengers was pretty freaking great. It wasn't until like the end game where it became more of a live service type of game that it kind of all fell apart.
I have heard that. I have heard that. And to your previous statement, Guardians of the Galaxy was a phenomenal experience.
Mhm.
I got a weird little experience with it. I played. I want to say maybe up until the halfway point. Everything I played, I loved, and fortunately for me, the wife was played the whole of it, so I did get to experience it as a whole, narratively, and they put their foot in it. They really put their foot in it. It's a shame that that game is not getting the love that it deserves, because it sales
Yeah.
wise it did not do good. I think reviews were mid, garner like going more towards positive, but
Mhm.
it deserved more love.
I agree. I mean, just compare the games that I just mentioned that are coming from Marvel and have already come out from Marvel compared to all these DC games that we're talking about. It's just it's like two completely different stories, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. I really I really don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah,
I,
I mean,
moving
until
on.
we find out, like, there's not really much more to talk about when it comes to that.
Yeah, no,
But
it's
do you
just sad,
wanna
really.
take us
I'm
on that new
sorry. Now I'm
topic?
thinking about, because DC used to give us a lot of really good games. We could we could go
Oh
on
yeah.
about that for maybe this one shouldn't have been a weekly roundup topic, because we could go on about it. Let's move the narrative along. Cyberpunk 2077's newest patch adds Steam Deck graphics preset. That's
I know that this is
heavy.
going to be making Saint Dimitri happy in the chat, right? Considering that he's already put an order in for that.
Yes, waiting
Um,
on his, to my understanding.
man, that's just it's cool. It's cool to see CD Projekt Red get ahead of the curve and supporting everything. Cyberpunk 2077 came out day one on Stadia, and it was actually a better experience on Stadia than 90% of the other platforms it
Yep.
was on, other than like the next gen consoles and PC. Well, in that case, it's more like 30%. But still Google Stadia making something work great on that. That's a feat. That's a feat. So it's cool to see them adding Steam Deck support, and I genuinely am starting to believe the whole Switch killer vibes from the Steam Deck. I
Hmm.
just think that Nintendo is in freaking trouble. I'm sorry to say,
Oh.
Nintendo is in trouble despite them having a niche. I just think that a lot of the people who have a fleeting interest in Nintendo properties and were more interested in the portability aspect of the Switch, which I believe is a lot of people, considering the Switch Lite's performance and sales,
Mm-hmm.
we're about to see something great with the Steam Deck. I think it's essentially the PC too.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to act devil's advocate here. I think the price point is too high to capture that market, and I think Nintendo has first-party titles, and that's something that's always going to be the appeal. I would say if we got Super Smash Brothers on the Steam Deck, not a ROM, not a ISO, not an emulated copy. If we got independent like cop versions onto the Steam Deck, I would agree with you. But I think the price point is too high, and I think the market for that is, I think the Steam Deck's market is really niche.
Man, I don't know if you can just kind of gloss over emulation when it comes to the Steam Deck, especially since people are online are posting videos of them playing Wii Sports, playing Breath of the Wild at higher frame rates than even the Switch. Like talking about the first party games for the Switch, you can play most of them on the Steam Deck.
Oh,
And I just I genuinely believe, especially when the docking station comes out, I genuinely believe it's going to be the best selling gaming PC just out there in the market.
hmm.
I'm not even talking about portable gaming PCs. I'm talking about like some kid being like, "Oh, I want to play PC games. Let me get the Steam Deck. Oh, let me get the docking station, plugging the mouse and keyboard into that." I can genuinely see that
I don't know, man. I don't know. But
happen.
I will give you points towards this. I do think it does put Nintendo in an interesting corner, right? The Steam Deck is powerful, and not just power, basically because of what's inside, but what it represents for handheld gaming. And I think that this particular topic, Cyberpunk creating graphic preset for the Steam Deck, is very telling. Nintendo will not be able to continue to just be the kid in the corner that releases things because they know they'll sell. At some
Yeah.
point or another, they're going to have to up their hardware game. It's kind of just the reality of home gaming, unfortunately. That's what it is. We live in a world where we have PS5s and Xboxes that are 4K and 8K machines. We have the PC market is booming more than ever, and now we have the Steam Deck, which proves that we can put PC power in your hands, and you can take it on the bus. You can take it on your plane. Like, that's telling. So for those of us that want to kind of blend those worlds, I admittedly the Steam Deck is looking kind of attractive.
And man, I think just the price is going to continue to drop. But at this point, we're just going to have to like save this for a discussion on a later episode because I think we can get really in depth with this.
I agree. I agree. Let's burn through a couple more of these topics really quick. Pardon me. A full Zelda Ocarina of Time PC port is now complete and available online. That, man,
That's
a game that refuses to go away. Not that I want it to, but a game that refuses to go away.
That's another Nintendo first party game now on PC and
Oh
playable
my
on the Steam Deck.
God, let it go. They will be sniped in the air by Toad and his minions, I promise you.
That's true. You're right. They've already probably been DMCA'd and just cease and desisted, you know.
100%, 100%. But I mean, hey, kudos to them for trying. And like, again, Ocarina of Time is a game that won't go away. There's a reason for that.
No.
It's an astounding game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely a pillar in storytelling in a game like that. But moving on to the next topic, going a little bit more in the CD Projekt Red theme that we've had in this episode. They casually confirmed an expansion for Cyberpunk 2077 is still coming. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It's still going to be using the Red engine.
Yep.
I'm just interested in seeing like what type of expansion it's going to be. What are they going to add?
I'm gonna hold CD Projekt Red accountable. I will believe it when I see it. We took way too long for us to get a proper patch for Cyberpunk. I appreciate the patch. Don't hold me wrong. I understand the work that goes into it, but it took way too long off the back of the fact that we shouldn't have had to wait for it to begin with. I do not want them working on expansions until they are ready and until we get this game to where it needs to be. A lot of people say it is where it needs to be, but it seems like with every patch there becomes a minor bug. So, I feel like I'm excited for the expansions. I want them. I just hope it's good, and I hope it's what the people want.
Here's a friendly wager, if you'd like. A friendly wager. I predict that this expansion will be announced later this year, and it will come out mid 2023.
Somebody clip it. Somebody clip it so we can return to it. Because I like my money. Somebody clip it. Because I'm going to tell you it's not happening. We will not see the first Cyberpunk 2077 expansion until 2023. I guarantee. Somebody clip it. Somebody clip it so we can come back to it.
You know what else we won't be seeing for a very long time?
Is it more Star Wars?
Man. Yeah. It just seems like any Star Wars game that I'm excited about immediately was pushed to like next century or something like that. The next topic is Ubisoft's open world Star Wars game isn't coming out until 2025 at the earliest, according to Tom Hiddleston, I want to say, who's pretty reputable with his sources. And this is just straight up heartbreaking, honestly.
I am always going to support the idea of push it back. The longer it takes for me to get things, the angrier I'm going to be, but the better the product damn well better be. In the case of Star Wars, that always hurts, especially considering everything going on with Star Wars Eclipse. I do remember catching wind of Ubisoft's open world Star Wars games. I'm always hesitant when it comes to Ubisoft's open world ventures, especially with the idea of that kind of going into the Star Wars realm. I wish it the best of luck, and I'm sure it'll be a polished game. I just hope that it'll be I hope we're not getting another. I just don't want my map to be filled with points. I take some Breath of the Wild inspiration. Let me explore the world and find the world in my own way.
I can say it right now as a big fan of Ubisoft games. It will be. It will have all those checkpoints and a bunch of crap just littered in the map. But yeah, I mean, we're not gonna have to worry about talking about that until like maybe when we're inside of a studio or something like that.
God's willing.
You know.
God's willing, something like that. Quick change of gears, really quick. I forgot to put this on here, but I want to throw it in really quick. Quick touch. Morbius. Morbius impressions are finally coming out into the open world. For those of you who don't know, the living vampire, one of Spider-Man's villains, portrayed by Jared Leto, produced by Sony, should be coming out, I believe, either the end of this week coming up or the next. It's poop. Apparently, it is dog water. It is not good. It is not the revelation you've been wanting from a Sony star-led movie in the Spider-Man universe. A quote that I distinctly remember. I didn't even need to write it in because I remember it so well. Morbius has two of the worst post-credit scenes you will ever see in your life. So, with that said, I was never excited for Morbius, and I distinctly remember sitting next to at least 4 individuals in my life seeing the trailers at the movie saying, this movie is going to be garbage. And it's good to feel validated.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like I'm naively optimistic about a lot of things. And I specifically remember watching the Batman with you and seeing that preview and being like, hey, this looks like it could be decent. Nah, man, listen. When it comes to like Utopian Revolt speak, saying that something looks decent means it's going to be straight dog water.
Oh man, there's just nothing. The only redeeming thing about this movie seems to be Matt Smith, and like even he's off his rocker through the whole film. So will I watch it? Yes. Will I enjoy it? No. Will I watch it in bed? I haven't pirated a movie in a long time. This will be the one. Like this will be the one. But I digress. Man. Back to the board. Xbox has announced 2 furry controllers inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog. They disturb me and frighten me, and I don't like to look at them.
This is definitely not something that you're going to be using while playing Apex Legends or any type of game that you sweat playing, because that controller is going to freaking stink, man. Imagine all the Cheeto dust on all that too. Man, I don't know. Cool little gimmick. Is anyone going to buy it? Probably.
Absolutely.
Should they buy it? I don't know.
It's gonna sell out. It's gonna sell out very quickly. Right.
It's gonna be scouts for like $3,000 or something like that.
100%. As we close in on our final 2 topics of the weekly roundup, Codemasters has abandoned the Dirt franchise after reobtaining the WRC license. Never was too big on the Dirt franchise. I didn't think it could survive in the Forza landscape.
Yeah. I think you're right. I don't think there's too much to be talking about this. I do know Codemasters, they used to have the license for WRC, and they lost it, which is why they created the Dirt franchise. So it makes sense why they would be abandoning Dirt now that they have the license back.
Yeah. And lastly, Rockstar announces the GTA Plus subscription for GTA Online, the game that refuses to die. Rockstar, man, is going to milk GTA Online until there's only 1 player left on the server. And even then, they will sell that man something.
I don't know if you saw, but at least in the UK's NPD reports, GTA has overtaken Elden Ring as #1 top-selling game over there. For this month, anyways.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
That is absolute... I love the franchise. I love Rockstar. I think, they have that reputation. Why isn't Rockstar at E3? Because they don't need to be. Like, no. They are that house, but man, they have rode the wave of Grand Theft Auto Online to no end, and I'm now at the point, I feel like how I feel about Skyrim. Actually, I feel more heavily about GTA Online than I feel about Skyrim. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to play it. I don't want to look at it. And honestly, I think it's dirty that this is the company that they've become. They've become this company that is just essentially just trying to bleed their player base dry.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I was actually right about to ask you which cow has been milked more, Skyrim or GTA, but I honestly just think that it's GTA at this point. This is what, the 3rd generation that GTA 5 comes out as the only GTA game. Well, no, PS3 had GTA 4 and all the amazing DLC. But that's kind of going to your point there. Rockstar has become a company that has gone from GTA 4 with the bangers of the story DLCs that they had to scrapping story DLC for games just to focus on microtransaction heaven, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it's disgusting, man. It really is.
And that rounds up our weekly roundup. I hope you guys heard something that you enjoyed. We're going to move now on to our next topic. The PlayStation Game Pass, as I like to call it, PlayStation Project Spartacus, is potentially being revealed as soon as next week. That is a long awaited announcement.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we first started hearing about it a couple months ago around like the Game Awards type of like timeline. Um, we've heard a lot of speculation. We've heard a lot of different reliable sources talking about it. We've heard that it's going to be basically combining PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now. PlayStation Now still exists for those who don't know. I think it was around a month ago, Sony stopped selling PlayStation prepaid cards
Yeah.
for PlayStation Now. Um, so I'm not shocked that we're getting this soon. I actually am shocked that it hasn't come sooner. Uh, but I'm interested. Uh, have you heard anything about like what it's been rumored to be and the type of benefits it's going to have?
So for as far as like early rumors go, I mean, obviously the elephant in the room is Game Pass. So everyone's been saying, oh, when are we getting a response from Sony? It seemed inevitable that we were going to get a response from Sony. Of course, it's been now watered down with the ideas of a tier system. Obviously, the idea of bringing in some form of streaming the game as opposed to downloading the game as a service as well over the internet. I honestly, at this point, everything is conjecture, right? So everything is rumor. So at this point, I feel like it could go either way. Do I think they need a response to Game Pass? Need? No. Should have? Absolutely. But I don't know if Sony will pull it off right, especially since the big rumor is the tier system. As far as Game Pass goes, the only real tier system you have when it comes to it is you have Game Pass and you have Game Pass Ultimate. And Game Pass Ultimate
Right.
is just for I'm sorry, it's just for PC. And correct me if I'm wrong, it may also require for you to have EA access and I all the Bethesda games, you may also have to have Game Pass Ultimate. But either way, that's still as far as that goes. So I'm interested to see if the tier list system is true and what those prices are going to look like and what they offer.
So I believe Bethesda games are playable in any tier, including the Xbox Game Pass for PC standalone service. I do know that Game Pass Ultimate also includes Xbox Live Gold for multiplayer gaming on consoles,
Mm-hmm.
and Xbox Live Ultimate also includes XCloud or whatever they're calling it now,
Yes.
Xbox Cloud Gaming. Um, so I think it's pretty similar to what PlayStation was rumored to be having. For those who are not aware, Jeff Grubb, who is a very reliable game insider, he has basically come out and said that there's going to be three different tiers for Spartacus. The first one is going to be called Essential, apparently. I'm pretty sure the names are going to change,
Mm-hmm.
but Essential is going to be priced at around $10. It's essentially going to be the same thing as PS Plus. So it's just basically, from what it sounds like, multiplayer, free games every now and there, you know. And then there's the extra tier, which is priced around $13. It's going to also include a downloadable game catalog, essentially what you can find on PlayStation Now that was already downloadable. Apparently, it's going to be around 250 to 300 games.
Oh wow.
It's not going to be including streaming at that point. And then there's the highest tier, which is premium. It's priced around $16. I wouldn't be surprised to see it more 15 to kind of
Yeah,
match
maybe
Xbox
20-ish.
Game Pass. 20-ish. I don't know. I think they're going to try to keep it as close to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate as much as possible. Um, but apparently, that tier is going to include everything from the other tiers and also going to have classic games, game streaming, and a lot of hype has been around this last one game trials, extended game trials.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. I That's exciting. I It's exciting. The PlayStation Now portion of it is what's exciting for me. So I've actually been severely let down by PlayStation Plus as of late. I haven't admittedly turned on a PlayStation for my own purposes outside of playing Mass Effect now for coming around a year, honestly. But I have kept track. So the game, the PlayStation Plus offerings, the free game offerings have been a little lax for me. So to know that I could pay a little bit more and have access to the PlayStation Now library, that is exciting. Especially if it's a non-rotating library, like these are the games that are in there and I get to download and play them. I'm all for that. Now, as far as the higher tier, they'd have to really entice me. I'm not sure extended demos and I'm not sure extended demos is the sell for me. I don't know if I'm willing to go to that extra tier just to get an extended demo or maybe a preview, you know, on top of those other things. I think honestly, if the tier system does prove to be true, I think it's that middle ground where people are really going to settle, and I think that's how it tends to be for most things.
I from what it sounds like, the biggest selling point outside of streaming for the expensive tier is the classic games. And if they have made it where you don't need to stream classic games anymore, like let's say if I'm able to just play the Sly Cooper collection on my PS5 natively, that
Yeah,
grabs me already. You
yeah.
know, I'm already paying for the highest tier. Um, I just really think that this entire service is going to come down to the games that are being offered
Oh
that
yeah.
are not old, that are new. And we know for a fact that we're not going to be getting day one God of War Ragnarok, the Wolverine, those type of games. So, how competitive in terms of third party games do you think this is going to be to compared to Xbox Game Pass?
As far as third party games, I think that's going to get a little complicated. My interest would be is if we're getting older third party games, because I think. So what I'm going to say is going to be a little weird. I would not be surprised if people disagree with this statement, but from my point of view, I grew up with a PlayStation 2 in the house. I didn't have an Xbox until maybe like mid high school years, like that. But that was just me. And the 360 was never really appealing for me. I was a PlayStation kid growing up. But a lot of those third party games that existed on the PlayStation or like on the Nintendo or Xbox and stuff like that, those are so hard to come across nowadays. And if you do come across them, they either are expensive or you have to you have to get the hardware again. You have to get a PS2. So for me, they're going to succeed where Game Pass is. They're going to succeed over Game Pass where if they offer more classic games. I don't necessarily need the Uncharted trilogy. I want the Uncharted trilogy, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I don't need the Uncharted trilogy. I need Sly Cooper. I need Spyro. I need Crash
Jack and
Bandicoot.
Daxter.
Siphon Filter, like Jack and
Yes.
Daxter. Those are the
Mhm.
franchises that when you think of gaming back then, it was almost synonymous with PlayStation.
Oh yeah. Oh
First
yeah.
party titles aside, like those ones like Siphon Filter, and I mean even for the longest time, Grand Theft Auto was a PlayStation franchise. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking for the classics. I don't need I don't need the newbies. I don't need from Assassin's Creed on, the very first Assassin's Creed on. Give me everything after. That's what's going to appeal to me. They're going to win this by
Interesting.
appealing to nostalgia.
Huh. You know, I think you might be right about that. And I just want to say we're living in an era where Siphon Filter is a distant memory for many people,
Oh yeah.
and there's I think that the vast majority of the population doesn't even know what Siphon Filter was
Nope.
or is. And I would love to be playing those games, and maybe some of the older SOCOM games. Like they haven't made a good SOCOM game in like a decade or more at
Yeah.
this point, and. Ah, I think it's gonna need to have a balance of those banger AAA games day one, something like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 day one on Spartacus, whatever they end up calling it.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually an interesting point. What do you think it's gonna be called?
I don't know. But not to sound dismissive, but man, with Sony, you really don't know what direction they're ever gonna go in. Honestly, until said Project Spartacus to me. That was the first time I heard it called Project Spartacus. So yeah, it could be Project Spartacus. I remember seeing it in an article where they had Kratos as the profile picture, and I was like, are we getting
Huh.
more God of War? I don't know. Honestly, I could they'll probably go something like very business cas, like maybe like a riff off of PlayStation Plus, like maybe PlayStation Ultra or PlayStation Premium or something like that. And of course, you know, if it's a tier system, we're looking at three names really. So I mean, PlayStation
Yeah.
Essential, PlayStation Mid, PlayStation whatever. So I don't know. I don't know. That just because of the three tiers, I think that makes it a little bit harder to give the guess a little bit.
I can I can see this easily just falling under the PlayStation Plus umbrella. It's an established brand that's been around for years. It was around longer than Xbox
Yeah.
Live Gold was. Um, I think it could be if that first tier is still going to be $10 the same way PlayStation Plus is, and it's only going to be PlayStation Plus. I can see that just being called PlayStation Plus, and then I can see the second tier being called PlayStation Plus Pro, and then
Hmm.
PlayStation Plus Ultimate. I can easily see that. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to matter because everyone's just going to start calling it PlayStation Plus anyways. Um,
Agreed.
I
Agreed.
think I think an interesting question when it comes to Project Spartacus is uh, one of the biggest advantages that Xbox Live Ultimate, Game Pass Ultimate, sorry, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate has is that it's on PC as well. And do you think that we're going to be seeing any form of Project Spartacus on PC?
Um, I think. Oh, I hadn't thought about that at all. I think that would be the icing on the cake. Honestly,
Yeah,
I think that would be the thing that says that makes people say this. Take my card. Uh, it would be untouched territory for PlayStation.
mhm,
One of my biggest gripes has always been that you know PC players tend to, pardon my language, tend to shit on the idea of like um, PlayStation exclusives, and especially since they're narrative experiences. You know, I
mhm.
found that PC players are more inclined to get an Xbox because of the multiplayer experience. Whereas with PlayStation, you know, their focus is usually on the single player experience, right? So
Yeah,
for me, I think that would give them a little bit of foot in that market to say like, hey, shut up, try our games, see what we've
yeah,
been about this entire time, and I think
yep.
that'll mean a lot. A friend of mine, who is a follower and a subscriber, is just now finding the magic of Horizon Zero Dawn, and for
Mm,
years he's been an Xbox person, and you know he's delved into the PC market from time to time. But you know, I tell him all the time, dude, Spider Man, God of War, Uncharted, like Horizon. Yeah, you're just now finding Horizon, but like Horizon, you know, Jack and
yeah,
Daxter, Ratchet and
mm,
Clank. These are not brush off the shoulder games. These are
mhm,
staples in this culture.
yep,
And the fact that, you know, a lot of people have never played them, like, blows my mind. But we know Halo,
dude.
we know Gears of War, but we don't know some of these main staples. And that's just surprising to me. So I'm hoping that that would be an amazing addition. And I'm hoping that is something that happens because to have PC players finally be able to be like, oh shit, I've been missing god tier games would put a smile on my face.
This is what I want to see next week when they reveal this. Just put out maybe a 3-4 minute little trailer explaining what Project Spartacus is. All they have to say for the PC side of it. Um, you're going to be able to play Sly Cooper on PC. You're going to be able to play Jack and Daxter, Siphon Filter, SOCOM. You're going to be able to play all these classics on PC. You're going to be able to play new games day one on PC as well. You're going to be able to play Destiny 2 and all the expansions at no extra cost with this service. You're going to be able to stream any PS5 game onto your PC or your phone or your Fire Stick or your Chromecast or whatever the hell you want to call it.
Your
Just,
Stadia.
I think yeah, yeah. I don't know, man. I feel like Stadium's over at this point. But I just I think we're going to probably be witnessing the next generation of PlayStation as a company, especially
Bold.
now that they're moving
It's bold.
closer and closer to live service games. They purchased Bungie for a reason, you know, and they have been kind of making it more obvious that they are going the live service route, like with Gran Turismo being online only, for example. I think also with Sony owning other properties outside of video games like Funimation and Crunchyroll and combining those into a streaming service now, um, what if Crunchyroll was added at no extra cost for this service? You can
Ooh.
get a bunch of other people on the boat. I just I think as a whole, Sony could do a lot of, I don't want to say damage. I think they can coexist peacefully with Game Pass.
I think there's potential there. Especially you brought up a lot of things that I'd forgotten about. But I do certainly think there's potential there, especially with Crunchyroll. And since I think we're heading into our like hopes and dreams for this particular project, I will say that you kind of hit a hope and dream of mine. Honestly, the only one that I haven't touched on. As far as needing to succeed, they would have to offer, as far as just being a Game Pass competitor, they would have to offer those new PlayStation releases on day one. So I mean, that would be very. I think that's also going to be a tell because let's be honest, this will be compared to Game Pass. There's no way,
Yep.
shape, or form to be around that. It will be compared to Game Pass, and they're going to need that to win that Twitter fight, which is super super important. But that's my hopes and dreams for Project Spartacus.
uh, I don't see them doing day one.
Mm.
Not for every game. I can see them doing day one for stuff like uh crap. I forgot that game already. That was was supposed to be a launch title for the PS5, and then it ended up getting delayed and being a is it Destruction All Stars? That
Yes,
that
yes.
I can see that those type of games being day one, but honestly, for most of the games, I can see them saying, "Yeah, hey, listen, just like Netflix or just like movies coming from the movie theater to streaming services, give us 4 to 6 months, and you will be able to play those games on the service."
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'll take that. I think honestly, I think it's funny that since we're having kind of a little bit of a conversation about nostalgia, because PlayStation brings that
Mhm.
up, I think it begs the question, bringing up topics, or pardon, games like Siphon Filter and games like Crash Bandicoot and Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank. This is a conversation that I've had privately before, but I think it's a good segue into this. Um, is gaming still fun? I've thought about that question a lot going into this conversation, and mm, the answer is not no. The answer is not no. And I don't think the question is even formed right, but I ask it like that with intent. We Gaming has changed so much, so much since let's we can go as far back. Like gaming's changed every decade. It's changed, and I think the basis of that question is kind of rooted in where we are right now in gaming. Right, gaming is so much more than it ever has been. It's gone from the bikes in front of your friend's front yard and everybody meeting up to go play Smash Bros or WWE 2K or 2K or LAN parties, things like that. And it's transformed so heavily now into competitive gaming and hardcore gaming, games like let's say Dark Souls or Elden Ring, where you're min maxing and your goal is to speed run it and beat it without taking any damage and stuff like that. I think the question is a lot deeper than is gaming still fun, but I go back to the original question. What is your opinion?
I think gaming is more fun now than it ever was, and I'll go a little deeper with that. I think that if you are a video game player, there is a game out there for you right now. Whether it's AAA, whether it's indie, whether it's a text adventure, whatever it is, there is a game for you. Gaming has become so accessible to your point where you could take your Nintendo Switch, go to your friend's house, have kind of a modern LAN party playing Mario Kart and that type of stuff, if that's your thing. Or if you're more of a Dark Souls type of player, you have an entire community to engage with. You can go to Reddit, so you can go to Discord, you can engage with the community in a way that we never were able to in the past. If you're a casual gamer, there's games like Stardew Valley that are incredibly popular. I just think that there's been such negativity around video games because of social media and just the natural side of those platforms. I think there's so much diversity out there right now in terms of video games that you can have just as much fun playing anything right now as you were able to a couple years ago in the age of the GameCube in that type of era. And I just think, going back to it, every single type of video game player out there has a video game that is really good and pure fun for that niche. You know,
Hmm. That's fair. I agree with everything that you said. I just I don't know. I think maybe it's because I live in nostalgia, right? So I mean, a lot of what I do is based off of nostalgia. I don't watch new animes. I like the old animation style. I like the old stories. You know, I love older
just should.
games. Like I love to revisit older games, and I look for a specific type of development in my games or specific types of wants. So I don't. I don't want to say I'm biased towards retro games because that is far from the case. But I will say that I do miss a certain level of like heart that I felt in older games, and like and a lot of the like childish joy that came from playing games. I was one of our coworkers. I was talking to her, and you know, I said like the difference between me now as a gamer and me then as a gamer was now I come home, you know, I load up, you know, Cyberpunk. Let's just use Cyberpunk as an example. I load up Cyberpunk, you know, oh, what missions are in my queue? What do I need to do? Oh man, I really want to get that car. I really got to get that car. Like, oh, let's just assume it has multiplayer. I got to do my dailies. I gotta make sure that I'm like doing my challenges. I
Right.
got to do this. Whereas, you know, high school Chris, I come home, I pop in GTA 5, I pop some people in the street, I laugh, and I get off. Like, like I, I miss that joy. Not to say that I don't enjoy games, but I miss that joy. I've yet to, I not yet to, but I can't think of a game as of late that I've just sat down and turned on and just fully immersed myself in joy. And maybe that's just me, but like, maybe that's just me.
Um,
I don't know.
not to speak for you,
Okay, please.
not to speak for you. I could be completely wrong about
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I saw you having so much fun with Sifu.
Oh God, fun is a
Like
hard
the
word for
game,
Sifu.
the game is hard. The game is hard. The game is challenging.
Yeah.
It's borderline rip your hair out, but you had fun with it, right?
Oh yeah,
And
I enjoyed it.
I I think that touches on a much larger subject here. I think the question really isn't, is games still fun, because depending on who you ask, they're going to be saying yes because they have their specific type of games that they
Yeah.
play all the time. I just think the video game industry has become so large, so abundant with content, and where like a couple years ago, like maybe like 10 years ago, in the day and age of like Game Informer magazines coming to your house, and then the next day you'll be talking about the games that you saw on there in school with your friends. We're coming to a day and age where every single week we have massive video game announcements like The Witcher being announced. Games have become very complicated, and it's hard to say whether gaming is still fun because it depends on the person and the type of games that
Mm,
they play. But I do believe that there is a game out there for everybody.
I agree.
Like even a game that we touched a little bit on a couple of topics ago, Tunic. You know, that is very much rooted in nostalgia around the Legend of Zelda games, and it's brand new. And from what it sounds like in the reviews, it's very fun. That new Kirby game that came out, it's brand new. It's apparently a freaking joy to play. It's so much so that the nice what was her name? I don't want to. Heather Wald said it was a 4.5 out of 5, and she gave it a glowing review. I just think that there's too many factors to play right now. That it's gaming has becoming too complex, too complicated to boil it down to simple terms like that. There is a simple joy, like you mentioned, to older games, coming home and playing like Mario Party with your friends and or your family, that type of stuff. It's different than the way things are now, but I don't think that means that gaming is not fun anymore. I think it's just a little bit harder to focus on the fun with all the external noise out there.
That's a good way to put it. I like that. I guess I guess I got to admit, working for an esports org jaded me a little bit. My perception of gamers, and I say gamers specifically, not gaming, I'm talking about gamers. My perception of gamers, I realize, has been very, very limited. I perceive gamers to be like your typical gamer, like, oh, I want to play a little bit of everything, I have fun, like, oh, I'm familiar with this and that and this and that. And I for about a year I immersed myself in this world where I was surrounded by people who one were saw gaming not wholly, but saw a good portion of their gaming experience as a means to become financially successful. That's for one. And two, um, only played a very specific subset of games. And I've deemed these people bro gamers. Uh, um, uh, and you know a bro gamer. Yes, you, and that person over there. You all know a bro gamer. They only play Call of Duty. They only play Rocket League and your Gears of War and your Warzone and your Apex. I was surrounded by that. And it definitely changed my perception a little bit. I would go to these tournaments and be surrounded by people who like, oh yeah, I just play Valorant. I only play Valorant, bro. Like I might play a little bit of like CS:GO. I might play a little bit of Rainbow Six Siege, but I only play Valorant. So maybe my gripe is with the competitive side because I feel like it has I feel like it's definitely, I don't want to say poisoned the culture, but I feel like it's definitely had an effect on the culture where we view games in a lot more of a competitive sense now than we did before.
I can see that. I can. My question would be like, do you find Warzone fun?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Do,
like
do
literally,
you
literally me.
personally? Yes.
I enjoy it with the right group of people.
Okay. How about Valorant?
Same situation
Okay. Now, what games do you consider to be fun that have come out within the last 2 years?
that have been fun for me. Sifu is fun. Guardians of the Galaxy has been fun. Apex. Oh, how old is Apex now?
That's a couple years old,
All
actually. I
right,
think
then I guess I
2019.
can't say Apex. Um, uh, Games like that. A PC building simulator. 2 years is tough for me because I don't
Yeah.
touch games for a while, so I do have to kind of like branch out there. PC building simulator. Jackbox. Smite, which is an esport. Games like that. Spider Man. God of War.
Yeah. So from everything you're saying, like every single game is belongs in its own genre. There's just so much content out there where you can basically make your own fun by choosing what to focus on.
Yeah.
You know, for me, I have a lot of trouble focusing on games. Mainly, one, I'm ADHD. Number two, I just go to work. I hear people talking about a game. I'm like, crap, I'm buying it tonight. Let me go home, play that. And then I keep going back to Cyberpunk because I got to finish Cyberpunk. I have so much to play, but I have fun with the games that I play. It's just a different type of fun than
Yeah.
it used to be. It used to be where I had one or two games every like half a year. I wouldn't be buying a game every single day on Steam or anything like that. And I would focus on that game. I would master that game every single day at
Yep.
school. I'd be talking about that game with my best friend. It gaming is still fun. It's just a different type of fun. And
Yeah.
it's more complicated than it ever was in the past.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like I should say this before I like rub somebody the wrong way. I love the evolution of gaming. If I found a very old Facebook memory post of me saying, and just to defend like esports a little bit, saying that esports should be an Olympic sport. Like I think honestly I said that about a week ago, 7 years ago. Like so I will always love and appreciate and value and endorse and uplift the idea of the evolution of gaming and what gaming was and what it will become. I can't wait to see what the next step is. I hope gaming remains fun for people. What I guess what I was trying to get at was it felt like I was surrounded by so many people that just wanted gaming to boost their career and boost their just have something to do to fall back on for this or that, or just like to fill that void, and not in a
Right.
fun way. Some kids felt so stressed out, and like for me, like video game and stress, it's so hard. Like unless it's Elden
I
Ring,
agree.
in which case you're prescribing your own stress. But I think that draws us towards the end of our show here.
I did have one last thing to say about
Please,
this.
please.
To your point just now, it's not something that's exclusive to just the video game industry, right? Because you can see the same thing with the film industry. There are directors out there who they direct because of the passion of directing and just the film industry. And then there's other people. I almost said Snyder, but I don't know the guy personally. That was just, uncalled for. But there
Leave
are
that man
people
alone.
who are there's just people who are out there to make money, and that's just the symptom of video games becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's maturing, it's growing at a massive rate to the point where in a couple of years it might be the number one way of getting content. We're seeing this whole metaverse thing now, where I think we're going to start seeing more of that dangerous mentality of real world and video games coming together,
Oh,
which I don't
absolutely.
like. I think we're gonna get to the point where video games are just this. It's a blob that means so many different things to so many different people.
I agree. I agree, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a really beautiful thing. I love where video games came from, and I'm more than positive I'm gonna love where video games are going.
Yeah.
Utopian Revolt, I think it's time for us to sign off. Tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Utopian Revolt, same spelling that you see right down here. So I am starting to post more about video games again. I know the last couple episodes I've been basically on a sports binge. I've been trying to get a little bit better about that. I am making progress on my own overlays and stuff for my own stream. I'm going to be streaming very soon. Just keep an eye on that. Catch me on, OG Goblins streams. Catch me on his Discord. We're growing the Goblin Gang, and yeah, I'm excited to be a part of it.
Fantastic. And as always, you guys know where you can find me. I'm here officially every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. It will not change. I guarantee it. I'm here every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. 2 days out of the week, I'm here with our good friend Utopian Revolt. We are playing D&D with our lovely partners, and of course here on Geeks and Goblins. Also, you can find me on Twitter at OG Goblin Games, as it is written right down below right there. Please go give us some follows, go give us some love. Thank you for tuning in as always. Utopian Revolt, it's always a pleasure to sit down and have these conversations with you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course. I couldn't think of anyone else to have. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I couldn't have thought of anyone else to have. Guys, thank you for tuning in. As always, I've been OG Goblin. He's been Utopian Revolt. Nope, he's that way. There he is. He's that way. He's been Utopian Revolt. We will see you on the next episode of Geeks and Goblins next Wednesday. Thank you for tuning in. Love you all, and good night.